Welcome, everybody, to a new episode of Williams on Workplace Justice. And so I know I keep saying I'm excited, I'm thrilled. I'm both of those things to be talking with Samantha. Her and I go back a couple years. We're two DC gals, and she has helped me in so many different ways. She's helped so many women that I've worked with. She's an empowerment coach who is really just kind of like this amazing, brave individual who says a lot of the quiet things out loud. And so I've admired her for a long time, and that she takes this rare and beautiful gift and helps teaches other women how to navigate spaces where there's a power imbalance. So welcome. I'm so glad that you are here.
Well, the feeling is mutual, and I feel like when Kim and I met, we were instant soulmates, and then had the good fortune to be able to work together. And always knew she would do her own thing as a force of nature, and so I'm super excited to be on your new podcast.
Thank you. Well, it's especially exciting that you just did this awesome interview on Fox, talking about all the news coming out with the Epstein files and what this could what this could kind of mean. And I know in that interview, they were asking, like, is this going to lead to other things like changes in board environments, changes in how people view women, view people in power and accountability? Do you want to expand on that?
I think at all of these incidences, the Weinstein, Epstein, Kavanaugh, Me Too, it bringing front and center the fact that sexual assault and rape and trafficking, I mean, this wasn't just like harassment. Like he operated a sex trafficking wing of underage women. Like let that sink. I was thinking about it when I was running today. And that like one of the girls was 16, I think one was 15. I was like, that a girl's body isn't even developed. Like you don't even have boobs. Like it's like a little boy's body. It's so young. Like, you have to be sick to do that, which is why I think people are, of both parties are coming out and saying, release the Epstein files because we need to know the truth here because I don't want to say something about America that like we let this stuff happen. I think they all are these watershed moments, and they're really important because they bring sexual assault, sexual harassment, rape, trafficking. There's more modern day slavery today than there was back then with the amount of women, girls, boys, indentured servants that are trafficked into the US. If you go to any airport in the US, especially Atlanta, there's signs that say, like, if somebody is not with their
Help
parent or doesn't seem to know that person,
on the hand
call. Like,
signal. Yeah.
yeah, especially, and it's got to be even worse now with all of the immigration crackdowns because people are going to be terrified to come forward if they are being trafficked.
No, you're
Because
absolutely right. And the State Department no longer produces the human rights
that's
report.
right. And the trafficking in prisons report, I think, is done.
Yeah, yeah. And so I know when I was there, it would came out, and the numbers are staggering how many tens of millions of people are trafficked every year and how many of them end up in the United States. So it is really soul destroying stuff.
So I think the broader thing is bringing attention to it, right? Bringing attention to, like we were just talking earlier, Me Too wasn't just about it, Me Too. It was, oh my God, this is happening to so many women. And because of non-disclosure agreements, which is something I was talking about last night, it often doesn't get, people don't know about it. Like, have you seen I thought the Weinstein movie was really good. She said about the two reporters.
Yes. Yeah, I know. And how they chased that story down, how they got them all to
Yeah,
join
and
together.
still, like all of these
Mhm.
women years later, one of them had
Mhm.
moved to Ireland and was living in like isolation on
Yeah.
the beach because she was blacklisted from Hollywood. And this is like with an NDA. So, there's a lot of risk when it comes to speaking truth to power. Not everybody has the capacity to do it. People sometimes need to take the money included with a non-disclosure agreement because they're worried they're going to be blacklisted if they don't, and they'll never get a job, and they won't have money, and maybe they don't have a partner that they can rely on financially. And there's so much risk. So I think the biggest and most important thing is it brings attention to these things that are operating under the surface that most people don't recognize, and puts them in plain view and says, look, this is here. It's ugly. You have to see it, and we need to fix it.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that about NDAs because there has been a real concerted effort to address NDAs, at least when it comes to sexual harassment in the workplace. So I know that even if you have signed an arbitration agreement, and there's so many snaky ways that employers will work in arbitration agreements and bury it into the fine print, make it a condition of your job,
Mm.
so that if you do have a sexual harassment claim, that they'll try and bury it in arbitration and you won't, find much relief there. But now it's really important to speak to counsel if you do have that type of claim, because it probably would go outside of arbitration and can lead to a meaningful difference in terms of outcomes. But I want to explore a little bit more too, what you were just talking about, that, I think there's so much of it that just deals with women. Obviously, men can be subjected to human trafficking. We see it more so in agriculture, but they're not immune from it, with sex-based trafficking or any of these other types of horrors that can happen to a human being. But it definitely brings up a lot of conversations around gender and power and politics. And, like we saw with the Me Too movement, it didn't just raise awareness kind of around the workplace abuse and sexual harassment, but where women belong in an organization. Do you see us at that place again?
That the Me Too moment, you mean?
Kind of where it, like, after the Me Too movement, it wasn't just about like forcing people to have conversations to recognize that what women put up with at work in terms of sexual harassment, but what they put up with more broadly, the weight that they carry, the emotional labor that they carry, the fact that they aren't put into positions of power, the way that they may be marginalized in other areas. And so as an offshoot of that, I think that you can tie more recent pay equity laws, pay transparency laws. I don't know if we would have seen those without a Me Too type movement, or efforts to try and diversify boards, or executive ranks. Do you see parallels there, or do you see anything like that happening
Well, I mean,
again?
the problem is we've had so much backtracking. So even one of the examples I use in my feminist leadership course is Adina Friedman, and she CEO of NASDAQ. I'm not sure if she still is, but she pushed through the requirements that there had to be on your board, there had to be, I believe it was at least one woman and at least one minority, and I don't think they could be the same person.
Mhm.
Not, I think that was it.
I think it was too, and now
Basically
it's
said,
gone. Right.
yeah, or
Yeah.
she said, you couldn't be listed on NASDAQ. And that was so cool because I remember talking to somebody at NASDAQ at a birthday party a year before that. And she was saying, Adina's trying to figure out how much to stick her neck out. And it actually, like, I thought I was going to consult for them. I didn't, but I was like, yes, she
Yes.
did it. She pushed it through. Like, this is a systems change. And then it was appealed, you
Mhm.
know? And then the other thing we're seeing, like, I do these women's leadership accelerators for companies, and I'm seeing major companies that were ready to sign up for women's leadership accelerators to empower women to be able to speak up, get paid equally, and not just like be treated equitably, be better leaders, like give them tangible leadership skills that would really help them and the place that they work because they're more capable, they're more confident, they're better able to negotiate, they have better executive presence, they are able to deal with male-dominated environments in a more effective way. They can speak truth to power the ways they're heard. I mean, there's all skills a lot of women need, and these companies are now pulling back and saying, we don't want to do a women's leadership accelerator because we don't want to get sued by a man who says, well,
Yeah.
why aren't you doing this for men? And I think men should get leadership training too. Like I'm an advocate for everybody getting resources and coaching and training. But to get rid of stuff like that or Women's History Month or another thing we've seen happen is, and this has been a real just crap as a woman-owned business. I remember the day that I found out that a lot of big companies had supplier diversity people whose job it is to go contract to minority, women-owned, veteran-owned businesses because 2% of procurement goes to women-owned businesses. I think it's less than 2%. So many companies now are getting rid of that. I mean, Facebook, they had a huge setup at the Women Owned Business Conference where they interviewed us and we talked to people and I was liaisoning about doing stuff with them. And then Zuckerberg just axed it. I think that if they haven't already, they're trying to get rid of set asides for women owned businesses in the government. I think they might have already tossed it or it's about to get
In a
tossed.
way, yeah, I'm not sure if that's gone through
So, I
either.
mean, I don't, I would love to say like, here's this moment of progress, but unfortunately, and there have been pay equity laws passed. There's more attention to pay equity. I think more women are now asking for what they're worth and recognizing it's not okay to be paid $50,000 less than my male colleague. This is not cool. But then they still, even the strongest women I know have called me and said, Sam, I found out I'm being paid
Mhm.
less than my male peers.
Yeah.
Coach me, help. It's
It's really,
hard.
really common. Well, and I think too, I mean, to me, what's so critical about women's leadership programs in general is it's not just women learning how to speak to power. I think a lot of women inherently know how to speak up and advocate for themselves. They're just not safe in those environments to do that. And, I've had that experience where I'm kind of one woman with a group of men that can be very dismissive, that aren't listening to a lot of complaints. And so how you engage with them and how they create a space for you and how they respond to you, whether they are open to these ideas, not open to these ideas, whether it makes them uncomfortable or not uncomfortable. And so it can also be a really powerful signal to all the rest of the employee base about how women are viewed, accepted, what their voice means, what their value means, what their time means,
Like
all these other
they're
things.
investing resources into them, like actual money.
Yeah.
But you bring up a good point too, Kim, which is the rollback of DEI. Because everybody's like, oh, DEI was such a waste. And there was some places that was performative. But let me tell you, I did training on inclusive leadership and DEI for a lot of companies, and it really made a lot of people wake up. I mean, it was not all performative. And I think I always say, women need to like Shirley Chisholm said, if they don't give you a space at the table, bring a folding
Bring
chair.
your own, yes, bring
You
your
know,
own chair. Yes.
like I think more women need to bring their own chairs or build their own damn tables, which is something I like to say. But if they can't, but they also need men to make room for them and men to make space for them. And what leadership training was doing, like we used to do this really powerful exercise at Corn Ferry when I was there, and it was, basically like a privilege exercise or like a privilege
Oh, where
walk.
you step forward if you've, if
Yeah.
your parents could afford college, if you lived in one home and just to make it really physically obvious, like the bears that
Yeah,
people
or
go
even
through.
just like having people reflect on that. Like, can you afford $1,000 if there was an emergency medical expense that came up in the next 24 hours? And most families can't in
Most people
America,
can afford
right?
$400.
So,
Yeah.
so like just, or I can, it even made me think, like I can walk into a hotel lobby and use the bathroom and no one says anything.
Right.
Or I can go into a store and no one's going to follow me around because they think I'm shoplifting. I mean, it called into question my white privilege, right? Like it
Mhm.
even made me think, and I really think it did make like men also think, like I can walk home and feel safe at night without worrying that somebody's going to, without mace in my pocket or something, right? I think that the conversations around privilege and just understanding the experiences of other people were really important and that not everybody has the same privilege as us or we have different, this person has privilege in this way and this
Mhm.
environment they're safe and this other way that they're not. And it sensitized people to that. And I'm really so sad to see so many places pulling back on DEI training because there's some really good, like I think I give really good training. I did training using virtual reality where you literally like put a VR headset on and experience what it's like to be in the shoes of a migrant woman wearing a hijab. I like it's
Yeah.
powerful stuff and it's really just it's a shame. So I think a lot of women's role now is bringing that back and then some.
Well, and they've been talking about that, in terms of pay equity metrics. We've seen a steep drop. We were making steady upward progress for decades, and then now we've just taken a step backwards. But I actually am hideously, I don't know, optimistic. I feel like this is a story that's not finished yet. And, I also feel like, at least in the DC context, all this just racist garbage about somebody being a DEI hire when they were incredibly confident, way more confident than other competitors for different roles. We have an administration that is merit based, and I'm not even going to pretend that that's like an acceptable word in this context. And so for me, what I think is really interesting right now is that, all this focus on merit by these particular individuals are shining a glaring bright light on this myth that merit had been around. It hasn't. Like merit really just implies no competition. And that's not merit. You're not the best for that role if you're not competing for it. If you're having to come up with some metric that's based on skills, knowledge, and understanding of the role, and not just kind of who you're loyal to or what TV show that you were on. So I feel like nobody's articulating the case for DEI better than a lot of the people who claim to be champions of merit. And I also just feel like DEI has been around for decades. We just keep calling it something different.
Yeah.
And I think the pendulum swing that we've always had in politics are already swinging back. And I think it's going to swing back, you know, quite fiercely. And I think we're going to see almost like a DEIB that's like 2.0, that's even better, because I think people will have learned from that. And I think it'll be much harder to do the performative PR. I'm just doing it because I think my consumers care about it.
Right.
If you did that and you gave up, we know it. So you're going to have to do better. You're going to have to figure out something different. And then there's just the awesome young people. Like there's Gen Z just blows me away every day with like the way they look on things, what they will tolerate, what they will accept, and then what they're creating in this space that really holds folks accountable. So I don't know. I feel like yes, it's not awesome right now, but I feel like good things were coming.
Well, I do think, and teaching this women's leadership course, one of the ladies the other day, she goes, oh, on election day, I finally felt hope. I hadn't felt that in so long. And Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey and Spanberger in Virginia and the California
Yes.
gerrymandering and the
Yeah.
first female Black mayors in Albany and Syracuse.
Mhm.
There have been a lot of wins. I mean, Mom Donnie is not a woman, but if you look at the picture behind him,
Oh,
it was
yeah.
4 women that are, he really cares about including women in his shtick.
Even he is kind of an outside of the norm. He's
Oh
not
yeah.
an establishment guy, and he ran on this campaign of just like affordability and trying to help people. And to me, I think there's like a real moment, a reckoning that we're seeing with both political parties on who has a right to speak up, who has a right to be protected, who doesn't, what's possible, what's not. So I'm seeing a lot of kind of baby break glass moments, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that you're pointing to that is where I've been going and thinking is when things break, you have to rebuild them. And
Mhm.
so, or when they're destroyed, right? So I just got off a call with their coaching session with one of my students right now, who was a contractor for USAID.
Mhm.
She was laid off. She started her own change management firm. She was scared to do the women's leadership challenge because of the money. She ended up doing it. She now has her first retainer client, a foundation for the next year and a half, and she's in business. But what I was just talking about with her, she works in places like South Sudan and Haiti that are tremendous conflict zones. And what we were talking about is building a feminist system of research and evaluation and monitoring. So there's a field called MEL, monitoring, evaluation, and learning in humanitarian aid, and building real partnerships with people on the ground where they're getting real pay and they're getting the South Sudanese are getting the security that's allotted to the women that come in from abroad or men, and they're getting the danger pay that we get. And so my point about saying that is that what I'm seeing now is a lot of women, including me, is like trying to figure out how do we build back better, build back some of these systems in a more, I mean, you served as a diplomat in difficult places. So you and I both worked in embassies. We've seen
Yeah.
how disconnected the community is from diplomats and how
Yeah.
often diplomats only talk to diplomats. And that's not what's really happening. And it's superficial. And USAID were the people that actually worked on the ground with the
They were the boots
community.
on the ground. I know.
Oh my
I
God.
know.
We're like the
Not
people in the freaking Princess Castle.
fortress. Yeah. Behind, yeah, a million walls. And you have to get permission from security to go outside. And yeah, no, you're totally right.
So how do you build these systems back in ways that are better, whether it's DEI or humanitarian aid turning into humanitarian partnership and the way we fund partners changing? Um, I just taught a class on feminist foreign policy. Feminist foreign policy, the bigger thinking now is going beyond rights, resources, and representation, which is what it always was, which is kind of add woman and stir, to
Yeah.
the financial system is completely based on a system that includes unpaid, that excludes unpaid work. So
Yeah.
GDPs, Marilyn Waring has a great documentary on this. The whole concept of GDP excludes women's work. And so if your work is not part of the gross domestic product of a country, you don't matter.
I know.
You're not valued, and women still have the majority of unpaid care work for elderly and for children. So the new feminist foreign policy is like system change. Like, how do we change the international financial system and debt relief and World Bank loans and what those are tied to? I mean, there's so many things. So I do think from a possibility standpoint, and I'm working on 2 books right now because I'm nuts, but
It's nuts. When do you have time?
I don't know. It's like when I get
Yeah.
inspired, but my second book, I think, is like something like feminist leadership, building a better world or building the new world or building a resilient future or something like that. Because the second book is really looking at how do we take feminist leadership principles, apply them to our own lives and apply them also to society. So healing is one example, right? How do we heal ourselves? And also, how do we as leaders, if we're in a society or an organization that's endured trauma, how do we incorporate healing into the way that we lead, into the systems we create? Or care, how do we incorporate, like, think about a caring economy and build that into government policy for paternity leave, maternity leave? There's so many things about rebuilding the systems that have been destroyed, because some of them were imperfect and but we have a lot of really big thinkers that are doing things differently now.
Yeah, 100%. And
For example, I just came back from Scandinavia, where in a lot of the countries there's a year of paid paternity leave and the men take it.
yeah,
And I was talking to this guy in Finland, and he was so happy that he got to spend all that time with his young kids. And you could tell it just made people better fathers, and the
yeah,
family was happier. And there's just so many benefits of that. And yet I can't imagine. I mean, I hope we get to the point where we get even a year maternity leave, but also a year paternity leave, and they lose it if they don't take it. So it's not like the woman can just take the extra leave.
yeah. That's a really great incentive. Yeah. No, and you're right. That does help the whole family because it also pulls us away from the space where mom carries a heavier burden than dad does. Mom takes a heavier hit to her career than dad does. So that's a gift all the way around. Um, Lots of good stuff there. How can folks get a hold of you?
So you're welcome to find me on LinkedIn. I should be the first person that comes up, Samantha Karlin. My podcast is called Samantha Politics, like anthropology and politics, that I've been doing sporadically these days. And then I also teach a women's leadership course, a women's leadership challenge. I'm interviewing people now for cohorts starting in January, but it really is a program for women who are ready to change the world, ready to step in their power, ready to start asking for more and not, not letting people take advantage of them, to really and to be with a community, because I now have like 110 alums across 36 countries, I think, to be with a really amazing community of women that are all building a better future, whether it's democratic peace building in the Middle East or being an award-winning documentarian about Taiwan's first female president, just one of my students right now. I mean, or the executive director of a nonprofit that works on missing and murdered Indigenous women. I mean, it's a really incredible community of women that's really inspiring. And we have brunch and we have happy hours, and it's a really great community. So if you're interested in the Women's Leadership Challenge, that's womensleadershipchallenge.com, or you can just reach out to me and we can chat about it. And then the other side is I also do a lot of corporate training. So, Kim, you can talk about the corporate stuff.
Yes, I've hired you. And so, and I'm a happy customer. Is why you're here today. And so, no, just really thoughtful and such a great partner, and always open, always great lines of communication, always creative, and just brave. It's one of the things I think that's really, really needed, especially in the HR space. One of the things I hope that does come out of this moment is almost like a reinvention of HR, where it's less a profession where, HR folks, a lot of them who are hurting too, are getting punched down at. They don't feel like they have the same rights as an employee, aren't like feeling safe enough to advocate for others. And so coaches like you that help people find their voice, find their agency, and feel safe enough to kind of push those boundaries and really understand power and how to apply it and grapple with it is needed now more than ever.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. I really appreciate that. And I loved working with you as well. And, I love partnering with people in HR who are brave like you and who understand what the workplace needs and who are, I loved Kim became chief people officer instead of head of HR, right? And people really felt like she's there for them, like they're her person that they could go to and trust, not, HR years ago who told me, oh, we have a system for making sure everyone's paid equitably. We know you're being paid $10,000 less than the guy who doesn't have a college degree and you just have your master's. But don't worry, we have a system, right? Where they're not looking out for you, they're looking out for the employer. And I think that's a paradigm shift is really HR people who are advocates for the people under them. But you guys need support too, because it's hard sometimes because you're pushing a boulder up a mountain and there's a
Yeah.
lot of resistance at the top sometimes. And you can't be the only person that's creating change in a workplace. It has to be multiple people and it has to come from the top and so many things.
No, agreed. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of progress that we have and kind of a shifting notion about looking at equity and things like that is a risk management strategy, and it has to be seeped in from the top of the bottom, and very much the same way that we'll see with physical injury. Like everyone has to understand some of these basic rules because there's liability when this isn't followed. People can get hurt when this isn't followed. And so I think we are evolving into a space where we're recognizing that psychological harm, that it is physical, like that type of bias or gender discrimination or race discrimination comes with real cost and real impacts to human beings. And it's just as worthy of our attention as a slip and fall. And so I think we're getting there.
Yeah. And even I remember doing Joy Anderson did a really cool training for women that were working on gender-based violence in nonprofits years
Mhm.
ago, but she focuses called the Criterion Institute on identifying the level of harm that women being in domestic violence situations has in the workplace because a lot of women then have to take time off or I mean God forbid
Mhm.
it's intertwined with the workplace too but a lot of women have to take time off and it actually is beneficial to give resources and pay attention to what's going on in their home life because it affects we're people where our work is also with our home so and I think too and one of the reasons I'm really passionate about leadership training and also leadership training within corporate spaces is because so many people are promoted from individual contributor to manager and they might be taught how to manage spreadsheets or project management
Not
software
trained on that.
but
Yeah.
they're not taught how to deal with the difficult stuff. Like, what do you do when someone comes to you and says they're being sexually harassed? What do you do if somebody has cancer? Like, what do you do when there's a huge conflict between two personality types and they're not working together well and it's going downhill real fast and you're losing customers? I mean, this is stuff that's hard. And I think a lot of, especially first-time managers, really need coaching. They need solid, tangible leadership skills. They need a space to talk about these hard things. And a lot of them don't get that space or they don't have the skills to give difficult feedback or receive hard feedback or advocate above them while also managing below them and how much do they push above them for resources or support uh, there's so many and I was just shocked at how many people like you'd never be promoted from a flight attendant to a pilot and expected that you could fly the plane.
Right. Yeah, I know.
It's a
But
different
we
skill
do it all
set.
the time. Yeah. And a lot of times too, like when you take someone who's really great as, somebody who works with widgets and you promote them up, you've now just also lost your best person. And then you haven't given them the skills to succeed, which will also just hurt their team and them. And a lot of times they're
Yeah.
miserable too. And so yeah, no, it's needed for sure.
So I'd like to see more organizations like invest in like really good training and coaching and realizing it's going to benefit. There's the numbers are crazy. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Mhm.
When you're investing in your employees up front, it might seem like a lot, but the return it's well, that's one employee. That's a return on one employee. I
And
mean,
the cost of not doing it is pretty
right.
expensive too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope that because I'm also seeing a trend where a lot of companies are pulling back on that. I think in the current economic climate, like it's a nice to have. Like, no, it's a must have. Like if
Mhm.
people, it can tank a company. I mean, it
Yeah.
really can if people don't have solid leadership skills. They can do a lot of harm, and they can do like personal harm on people that they don't even know that they're having, that 20 years later that person's talking about in therapy or they're talking to you about and calling you.
Or talking to a lawyer about. So
Yeah.
you definitely don't want that. So,
Okay.
well, awesome. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm also going to put links to reach you down below. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, and I'll also say, sorry, my website for corporate training is empowerglobal.net, or you can reach out to me. Just reach out to info@empowerglobal.net and someone will get back to you. Thank you for having me, Kim.
Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.